Okay, hey again, everyone. It's Emma here at Function Point. Thanks so much for joining in today. Today we are on session one of our little three-part series we have going on here called I Love Jobs. So today being the first session, and I've got a co-pilot today, our resident, lovely Australian, Daniel. Daniel, are you there?
Yep, g'day guys. Thanks for
Oh,
joining in.
Oh, Daniel, thank you for being my co-pilot today. I really do appreciate it. And Daniel will be checking on your questions, so feel free to type those as we go. We're going to go for probably about a half hour today, maybe a little bit more if we get lots of questions in. So do feel free to ask them just in the GoToWebinar control panel. Now, I am recording today, so this session will get posted up in our help site later today or probably tomorrow. So if other members of your team need to listen, feel free to direct them to that recording, and also feel free to just listen today. You don't need to sort of take fast and furious notes. Everything that I am reviewing today, we do have documentation on as well. Okay, so just want to pop through a couple of slides here just to go over what we're going to be reviewing today. So let's hope I can manage that. So here's a bit about our agenda. We're just going to be going through how to use the integration to email tool, the connect to email tool. So I'm going to be going through that a little bit. I'm also going to be going through some best practices, steps we recommend you take when the client comes to you and says, hey, you know, that estimate you approved and that work we're doing, I'd like to make some changes to that, please. So what we fondly call scope creep. So what you've probably all dealt with a little bit. Of course, there will be time after that for questions, so we'll come back to this agenda in a moment. So I'm just going to hit my escape key and hope that takes me where I need to go. Looks like that's working. Just bear with me, move my agenda away, and hopefully everyone can see the screen I'm sharing. Okay, well, let's get the party started. So I'm just on the Function Point website here, and I'm going to log into just one of my test systems now. And Daniel, I'm just going to chime in with a question to you, Daniel.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, so feel free to just, I'm going to check in with you as we go, and hopefully you'll be able to answer questions if they come in, but feel free to interrupt me if I'm doing something or if my screen sharing stops. So you know the drill, my friend.
Sure do.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to log in here. I'm just going to type in my password. And here we are just on my dashboard of one of my test systems here. So it may look a little bit different. Of course, you guys may have changed certain words in your own systems, may have different dashboard layouts in your own systems. So just keep that in mind that mine may look a little bit different to yours. All right, so what I thought I'd start with was the scope creep aspect of things. And the scenario that I've heard clients come to us with is they say, well, we've put together the estimate, we've put together the job, the client signed off on the estimate and approved it, and that's all great. And then somewhere along the way, the client needed to make a change to the scope of the work or to what was included in that estimate. Now, we do work with a lot of clients who just go and plonk the change in, just go and start working on the changed item without going through the formality of the steps I'm going to show you. But we do recommend that what you do is you get the client to sign off again on the estimate. It's just covering your tail feathers, making sure that the client's agreeing to what you think they're agreeing to, and that you can make more of a guarantee that you're going to get paid for this change of scope at the end of the day. So I'm just going to go into one of my pretend jobs here. I've got one here, job 110, a flyer for a promotion. I'm just going to click on the name of the job. So my client in this situation has said to me that they want to now add something to this job. So if I look at my estimate, just coming to that estimate tab, I can see that my original current active estimate, just going to click on it, was for just over 1,800 bucks, and it included several internal services like art direction and copywriting. Well, the client now, let's say, wants to add some printing. So what I want to do is I want to come in and I want to make an edit. But what I want to also do is make sure that I capture that change. So I'm going to choose this create revision button. Now I've admittedly done a bit of a boo-boo here in that this really estimate should have been in an approved status. So what I'm going to do first is put it into approved. I admit I was experimenting with my system earlier to make sure everything was working fine, and I inadvertently de-approved that estimate. So let's say in our situation now, we've got our nice approved estimate, because approved estimates are what we want, and then you turn those into jobs. So I've got my approved estimate and I need to make a change to it. So I'm just going to click revise and edit services here. System's telling me it's going to create a revision, which is fine. That's what I want. And I'm just going to add a new service or service group to this estimate. I'm going to add an outside cost, let's say some printing. add that in. And let's say my printing vendor has told me it's going to be about $1,200 to do that printing work that the client wants. So that's put a really different total on my estimate. I want to save that. Now at this point, I can say, yeah, let's just reapprove the estimate, or you can deselect those approval buttons to put it back to that in review status until the client signs off again. So whatever you're more comfortable with, at the end of the day, at least we've made that revision. I'm just going to click submit to reapprove it because the client's given me the verbal okay. But again, we do recommend that you generate the PDF with the sign off, or you send that to the client, a physical copy or an email copy of that, and get them to just approve it. So they've approved that, and that's really all there is to it. This is now a new line item on my job, and I can now see that on my job details from the financials tab. Now it's really straightforward because that was an expense for me to just click that button to add the vendor Pic documentation once I have it. And this item will also pull to my invoice. So if I were to add an invoice today, let's say, I'll just do it based on estimated values. That new line item, the printing, is now on my invoice as well. So again, pretty straightforward steps for those of you that are really familiar with the system. That's maybe a bit of a like, oh yeah, I knew how to do that. But we wanted to appeal to some of our newer users who have asked that question of us regularly. So again, all I did and all we really recommend is that if a client changes the scope of work on you, if they want to add something to the job or even take something away, that you come into that job, whatever it might be. I can just pick another one here. Let's just pick another one at random here. I can come into that job and see what's going on right now. I can always come into the estimate, click the estimate, edit the estimate. Now again, I've got one in review, so putting it into an approved status will automatically save a revision, or you can always just hit create revision, create a revised version of it to include the new item, whatever it might be. So let's say in this case, we need to include some photography. Can put in what the costs, if we know what our photography are going to be. Save that up. We've now got a new version of the estimate that we can again send off to our client to reapprove. Now, Daniel, I didn't see any questions come in. I'm sort of keeping a side eye on the question area there, but did that all make sense? I mean, you know our system really well. Does he think there's anything else I should review as part of that process, or we're looking good?
No, we're looking good. No questions so far. I think it's smooth sailing ahead, so please fire away.
Fantastic. Well, we are making record time, so that's a good thing. All right, let's just go back to our dashboard here. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this email integration piece. Now, this is a piece of the tool that's relatively recent, and I've seen a lot of clients that I worked with who've been current users for a while not be fully aware that this was even here. So I think this is an item that will appeal to both our new and current users. So what we're going to,
Before we,
oh yeah,
I will
please,
interrupt just one second because we
please.
do have a couple of questions now.
Oh, great.
So we've got a question here from Daniela. So how do you get the client approval menu box? And I think
Oh,
what Daniela might be referring to is when you revise that, if I'm not mistaken. But
yeah, well, let
that
me,
was the,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. Sorry, no,
No, no,
fire
no.
away.
We're talking over each other. It's a beautiful thing. I think what Daniela and I think you're thinking the same thing is asking about is just on any estimate. We've got a couple of spots that she might be referring to. So on the estimate itself, this approval status field will appear on any estimate. Any estimate you create, any estimate you look at will have that approval status field. Now, if it's open in review or in submitted status, you'll see all four options. Once it's in an approved or declined status, you'll only see the one. So if I were to mark this estimate as approved, it's just giving me that little notice saying if I make further changes, that they're going to save a revision. And now I don't see my options anymore because the estimate's approved. Daniel, is that what you think were thinking Daniela was asking about or something slightly different?
Uh, no. You might want to. Okay, so one second. Let's
Sure.
have a look. Okay, so approving a new revision. So if you go ahead and actually click on revise and edit estimate,
Yeah. Either will work. Yep. And then when I save it and get this guy
Correct.
here,
That's the one.
that's the one. Okay. So it is just a matter of coming in to revise the approved estimate. And then once you hit save again, you'll see this approval status box. So hopefully that answers it. And what I think is neat with this, excuse me, is that you do have the option to change the approval date and to even say, you know what, this guy's no longer approved. I'm waiting for this to come up. Okay, excellent. Did we have any other questions about this item, Daniel, or do you think we're ready to move on to the email piece?
We do have another item, but I just wanted to add to this approval process as well. If we opted not to set the estimate as approved, we could then generate a client-facing version of the estimate and then send that off to the client for approval. But what Emma's just done there is manually chosen to go ahead and actually mark this estimate off as approved because we've been given the so-called verbal go-ahead. But we
Right.
do
Yeah.
have another question.
Go ahead.
Okay, this question is from Karma. What if you
Mhm.
create a revision, send it to the client for review, and then they change their mind and don't want to include the added items? Can you go back to the historical older copy of the estimate and make it active again?
Karma, clients never do that. I don't know what you're talking about. What world do you live in where clients change their minds like this? I am kidding, of course. Yes, absolutely. You can always go back to historical versions. So under your revisions tile of any estimate details page, you'll see the historical versions there. It's just a matter of drilling into it and marking that as the current one.
And each revision of an estimate is marked off as an R1 or an R2, so it's sequential numbering, and of course you can see under that column if the estimate is active or a historical estimate. On that note, we do have another question here from Lindsay. Can you use that function to increase hours or expense of a currently existing item?
You absolutely can. Yeah, great question, Lindsay. If I were to come in, let's say I'm going to come into my active estimate here in this example, and again, I'm going to choose to revise and edit the services, giving me that little message saying it's going to revise things. That's okay. And again, I could certainly just add another service group or service, but I also absolutely could increase the hours here, change the hours, do whatever I need to do to change the overall total, and then save that change again. Now, Daniel, I don't mean to interrupt or jump ahead of you at all. And hopefully, Lindsay, that answers your question. I did see one come in from Matt about reverting to a historical estimate after time is being tracked to it. And that is a no. So you can, I may have misspoken when I answered the question about reverting to historical versions earlier. You can do so, I should have clarified, so long as time has not been tracked. That does not prevent you, though, from creating another version of the estimate and creating another new version of the estimate if you have track time and need to make changes again. So hopefully, Matt, that addresses your question, and thanks for pointing that out. Oh, and don't give me the sad face. Matt gave me a sad face on the question panel there. It's not a. It, I promise you, Matt. We can look at it together offline if you like, but it's still pretty quick to go and make that change. What I like is that you can always come in and see the version history and see, often be able to see what the change was so we can see between one version and the other where the price has changed and just go and make a new version with that change back and save it again. I know it's not as easy as going into the historical version, but yeah, once time is tracked, that is locked down. Daniel, do you see if we've got any others regarding estimate revisions and that scope creep kind of items, or should we come over
Yeah, we've
to
got one here from. We're going to move into email integration momentarily, guys. Just before we do, we've got a couple of more questions here. So, a question from Don. Once you update the hours in the estimate, how do you get it to scale through to the schedule?
Great question. What we would recommend is that you probably will need to go and do that manually. That's a good one from Don and not really what I was hoping to cover in this session. So Daniel, could you maybe review that one offline separately and that let us just go into email integration if we have a moment, we will come back to that one.
Yeah, so we can definitely do that, Don. We'll connect offline and cover that for you.
Yeah, it's usually quite straightforward. I just want to make sure. I know we've got a couple people that are really chomping at the bit to get into email pieces. So let me come back to that just to address those people whose priority was to see the email integration piece within our sort of ideal half-hour limit, and then we can stay on and certainly address that question from Don and any others that come back to this scope creep item. Okay, so keep the questions coming, everyone, for sure. Not trying to shut them down. Again, just wanting to accommodate those listeners who are eager to get into the email piece, and then we can certainly wrap up anything else. Okay, so let's go and talk a little bit about email integration. I'm just going to pop back to my dashboard here. So again, this is a fairly new item on the list of features that Function Point offers. What I've noticed is that although it's been around for a little bit, some of our current users aren't aware of it or haven't really started to use it as part of their workflow. I'm a big fan. It's something we use internally, and I think of it as just a great way, again, to sort of cover your tail feathers and make sure that you're capturing information that you're communicating between yourselves and your clients or vendors or suppliers or even your prospects. So what we're going to see is that on every company, contact, and job page, you're going to see this connect to email button. So I just want to point that out. So if I just come in and view, let's just view a random company in my system here. We've got that connect to email button. It also exists on any contact page. So just clicking on a contact name, connect to email, and then we're going to see it on any job page as well. So if I just click into any job in my system, I'm going to see this connect to email button. When we click on it, it's going to give us a little pop-up window. So I'm just going to pop back to, I had a good example here. So I'm going to come into a contact in my system named Peter. And again, this is just my test example. So Peter's email is actually one of my Gmail addresses. So bear that in mind. And I'm going to choose this connect to email button. So let's say that I'm communicating something to Peter. He's someone I'm maybe working with as a prospect. We may not have any actual jobs going on with him at the moment, but I want to capture my communications with him. I click the connect to email button and I get a couple of options here. So I have the option to either just copy and paste this email address here, or use the click to link button. What this email address is it's a unique email address just associated to Peter at Galaxy Guardians Company. And that is, you'll have one of those for each company, contact, and job. So I can copy and paste that. And then when I'm sending Peter a message out of whatever email client I'm using, I can use that in the CC or BCC line. But what I use personally is I use this click to link item. And what that does is that's opened up my email. I use Postbox, and it's included Peter's, my Gmail address, my client's email address, as well as that unique email address to Peter in my FP system. It's even tried to save me a little time by popping a subject line in there for me, which I can certainly change. So, thanks for the call. I can put in the content of my email, whatever it was going to be. Just type something innocuous here. And I can send that off as I would normally. So off that goes. Back in Function Point, just give it a minute usually to refresh. If I come into the Notes tab for Peter, we can see it's already there. There's that exact email captured under the Notes tab for Peter. Now the same thing is true again at the company level or at the job level. So if I come in, let's see what jobs I have going on with this organization. I'm just going to come up to the company level. And I think I've got a job going with these guys. There's
And
my
just to get clarification from you, sorry, Emma, Galaxy Guardians is no way affiliated with Guardians of the Galaxy?
Oh no, it's heavily affiliated. In my
Oh,
imaginary company world, I work with some pretty crazy, outlandish cartoon characters, because why not? Good question, Daniel. So in my job details page here, again, I've got that connect to email button. So I can click that. And again, this particular job has its own unique email address. Now yours obviously won't have Emma underscore blank in them. That's the name of my system here. Yours will have something more close to your system name. So I can copy and paste that into my email, or I can, again, I use this click this link item. That's opened up again my post box. It's put in my name because I'm a job contact, my client's name, Peter, that's his fake email, and the unique email address for this job. Again, it's tried to save me a bit of time by putting in a subject line, but I can change that. So, great work on logo, whatever it might be, put in my job related messaging, however much I want to put there. I can even attach files that will also get stored in the FP system. Send that off, away it goes. Close this, and then I'm just going to sort of refresh. I'm going to go back to my dashboard for a moment. Just often takes just a few seconds or a moment. Sometimes navigating away from the page helps it load. I'm going to go back into my job now from my dashboard. And under the Notes tab, fingers crossed, there's my great work on logo message there. So again, I'm a big fan of this. I did, out of the corner of my eye, see a question about with the click this link work with browser-based emails. It won't work with browser-based emails. It will work with desktop clients, so your Gmails, your post boxes, etc. But it's still perfectly, again, in my mind anyway, pretty straightforward to just come in and just grab this, just copy that. Obviously not quite as easy as click this link, but if you're using an email, a web-based email, it's still quite straightforward to just grab this and use that. Yes,
And we do have
Daniel,
another question.
please.
Question from Suzanne. If
Mhm.
Peter replies to your email, will it also save in the notes section to the job?
Great question, Suzanne. Thank you for that. What will happen is that if Peter, let's say, receives that email, or when he receives that email, if he hits reply all, it will pull that address in. If he just hits reply, so similar to any other email, if I send a message to Daniel and to Ross, and Ross hits reply all, it'll come back to both Daniel and I. If Ross only hits reply, it'll only come back to me. So as long as the person on the receiving end, Peter in this case, hits reply all, then yes, it will come back and get captured. So whenever that email address is used, the function point system is going to do its best to put it into the appropriate place, be it the job, the company, or the contact.
And another question from Stephanie. What is the max file size you can send in the FP email?
Oh, that's a great question. Really, the max file size you send can be anything. The max file size, in order for it to be captured in function point, though, is 50 megabytes, 50 megabytes. So there's no limitation to what file size you choose to send. In order for it to get captured into the Files tab of your job, contact, or company, though, it will need to be 50 megabytes or smaller.
Thanks, Emma.
Yeah, no problem. So again, that's one I'm a big fan of, and hopefully people will start to use it. I just really think of it as such a great way to keep things covered. An example I often refer to with other clients is several years ago I worked for an organization, and I was taking a couple of days off, and they said, "Oh, great! Well, give us your email address, login, password, so that we can check your email and look in things while you're gone." And I thought that was a little bit strange, but also understood, what choice was there if someone's on a holiday and a client calls up and says, well, that Emma never responded to me or never emailed me. What choice is there but to go and root through your email or to call the person when they're on holiday? With this kind of scenario set up and with using this system in this way, someone could be away. Peter could call up my fake company here and say, hey, that Emma never gave me the job update, and anyone would be able to, through their access to function point, to go, oh, wait a second, it looks like she reached out on the 12th and I can see the email and I've got a copy of it without having to access my personal email or call me on vacation. So that's the scenario where I think everyone kind of goes, oh, right, that'll work for me. So I do encourage everyone to use it and give us your feedback on it as well.
I have to say, slightly off topic, I'm really impressed with today's group's questions because they keep on coming in. So great to see a lot of questions come in, guys. Speaking of which, Patricia has a question here. If your client doesn't click on reply all, how can you save or archive it that you have an email thread?
Oh, great question again. And I've had that happen myself, where the client has maybe responded to me, and they haven't done reply all, or it hasn't been captured. And I think, oh shoot, I don't really want to reply to them for no reason other than to capture the thread. So what I will do is I will just forward it back in. So I'm just from my other account here. Just bear with me here. So I've got, there's my Postbox account and there's that email message. And let's say I went, oh, shoot, that didn't get captured by function point. Someone replied, it didn't get captured. You can always just forward the message and then just put the address from function point. So put that unique email address into the to or the CC line and just forward it, and it'll get captured into the system without you necessarily having to like, oh, I better just respond to the client again saying thanks or with a happy face just to like loop it in. Just forward it from your messaging system into function point by using whatever the unique email address is for that job or company or contact. Hopefully that answers the question. That's what I've done anyway to make sure it gets in there if the client hasn't hit reply all or if I've failed to include the unique email address.
Okay, we've got a couple of more here.
Mhm.
So Lindsay's asking, is there a search function for emails and notes?
Great question. Thanks for that, Lindsay. Yes, there absolutely is. And actually, our searching has had a nice makeover recently, and as well as the results list. So let's just take a quick look at that. Let's say I wanted to find this particular note in my system, the great work on logo note. And, a month has gone by or some time has gone by, or I can't quite remember what it was about. I have several options. So let's just pop back to the dashboard here. I could come into the notes module because all those emails are being saved as notes. And I could do a find. And I could search by any of the fields here. So perhaps I just remember who sent the message or which company it was about. Perhaps I remember the job it was related to. And if I do, I can put in any of that info. So maybe I remember it was for job 1110, and I can find notes. And it's going to bring me up a list view of any notes that were associated to that job. It's also showing me that they were in the category of email, so that helps me identify the one I'm looking for. What I'm also really digging, just to speak to briefly, and Lindsay, I hope that answers your question, is that I could say, well, this is a great list and it's giving me lots of information, but not all the information I need or want. What you'll find on any of these list views now, be it notes or jobs or estimates or what have you, there's this Manage Columns button, and I can choose to show or not show certain pieces of information. So if the follow-up message is not important to me, but I really want the job name, and I actually really want the content of the note, but I don't want the created on or the created, maybe I don't need, let's see, job number so much. I can also drag and drop those pieces of information around, save my columns, and get a very different view of things right away there. So that's a little neat feature that we've added recently as well.
Another question here from Sam.
Yeah.
Do we have recommendations for best practices on whether to choose connecting to a company, to an individual, or a job?
Oh, great question. What I've seen people do is that I would recommend connecting it to the job if you have a job. And if there isn't a job going on, then just do it to the contact. I find that works well. What the benefit of that is that connecting it to the contact sort of inadvertently connects it to the company, because all that stuff gets kind of, what would you say, like stored ultimately at the company level. So if I were to look at the Galaxy Guardians here, everything I do for them, be it a note, be it a job, be it an invoice, it's all subsequently and eventually stashed at the company level here. So any notes, be they at the job or contact or whatever level, are all here anyway. So I would say that if you have a job going on, do it at the job level. If it's related to that job, do it at the job level. If it's not related to a job, do it at the contact level, because that sort of subsequently makes it at the company level as well. Hopefully that answers the question for Sam.
Another one from Sam.
Oh,
This time also, can you force FP to add the linking address to BCC rather than the to field?
you cannot, because that's not, no, we don't have the power to do that. But what you can do, I'll show you a little extra something, Sam, that you might like. And I hadn't thought I would go into, but there's no harm because that question does, that's a good question to bring this up. In everybody's system, You will find back in the admin section under System Preferences, if you have access to this, and under the tab called Email, you're going to find this address. Well, not this one. You're going to find an address. And what you can do in a way to like extra cover your bases, and something that we do internally as well, is you can tell your email client, whatever it is, to always include that on the BCC line. What the system will then do is that if it always sees that every time in the BCC, it will always make its best effort to put the email in the appropriate place, either to the appropriate, usually to the person, because it's looking for people's email addresses. So we'll always try to store it with the appropriate person. So that is a way that you can have sort of a universal, always standing BCC address, is with this one that you'll find back in your admin system. But no, if I'm understanding Sam's question correctly, there isn't a way to force the connect to email button at the company contact or job level to go to a different line other than the to line. We're telling it and directing it to the to line in an effort to help you capture the responses, because again, if people are hitting reply all, then that message is being looped in very easily, and you're having a better chance of capturing the responses from your clients. Think that covered that one, Daniel?
I think it did.
Sam will tell us if it did not, I hope.
No, Sam's thanking.
Oh, good. Okay.
So she's thanking Sam.
Okay.
No
I
worries.
think it's a he, but that's okay. I'm not sure. Should we go back, do you think? Have we got any others about that, or should we try to go back and address Don's question about changing the estimate and then how you would go about then wanting to update your schedule down the road? What
Yeah,
do you
we can
think?
do that. Or we can just ask the rest of the attendees if they have any more email-related questions and notes and whatnot, and then we can move back onto the estimates. How does that sound?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I mean, what we'll do, we're at 12:34 Pacific. I'm happy to keep going for another, we'll go till the top of the hour for sure if need be. And people are welcome. Like that was I've gone over all the main content that I wanted to cover. So if anyone's like, okay, cool, I got what I needed, I won't be offended if you drop away. But everyone else, of course, is welcome to stay on the line, and I will keep answering questions for another 20 minutes or so for sure. And what I want to point out just before I go back and look at Don's question, um, you will get a follow-up message from, I think it's coming from HubSpot or GoToWebinar later today, with links back to the documents that are covering what I covered today. Whew, that was a bad sentence. As well, we are recording, and the recording will be posted probably tomorrow, because we do need to convert it and get it uploaded. It will be posted tomorrow. You'll be able to find it in your own systems if you hover over Help and choose What's New. What's New is always going to list the latest and greatest things in the order that they come out. So last week, releasing the sign up for this recording from our last Spring into Accounting session. So you will see in the next day or so the recording of this session posted up here. You can also, of course, always find more information under training. We've got that divided up into a few different sections. Really, I recommend the library. It is, as I've said there, the mothership of how-tos. You can also certainly search in this area. And if you can't find the answer you're looking for, please just let us know. Our community forum is also available. You're welcome to sign up to be a part of that. By signing up, you don't have to sign up to access it, but by signing up, you'll actually be able to submit feature requests and communicate with us and with other users in that forum. Okay, let's just
And
go.
just while you're there,
Yeah.
actually,
Oh, yeah.
sorry to cut you off, Emma.
No, no.
Just back on that page, we've got a question here from Lisa. She'd like to know what's the best place to take a look at for creating schedules and estimates to learn about those processes. So, in fact, just where you're on is probably one of the best places to take a look at that.
Yeah, and Lisa, you're welcome to drop me a message with that as well, because schedules and estimates, that could be, there's a lot of information there. So you're welcome to discuss with me. If you're just looking to improve or increase your general knowledge, we can certainly point in that direction. But if you have like a specific scenario or workflow you're looking to sort out, then feel free to drop either me or the support team a line, and we can give you more specific directions. But I would probably recommend, for starters, the library. And a good place to begin in the library, just while it loads here, because the library is chock-a-block, I will admit. Come on, library, load yourself. There we go. Down towards the bottom of all we have here, again, this area is all searchable. There are videos. So you may find the quickest way to sort of get up to speed with some of those subjects is to watch a little video about, creating a job and adding an estimate. And we do have a couple in here about creating schedules. So schedules, either starting with a schedule, using that as a template, or connecting a schedule to an estimate or job that's already in your system. So maybe start with the videos, see if those answer some of your questions. If not, then we can recommend maybe some documents, or we can certainly spend a little bit of time together as well. Hopefully that answered Lisa's question there. Excellent. All right. Well, let's, Daniel, unless there's something else, I'm going to pop back to that scenario that Don put forward. Is that okay with you?
By all means.
Okay. And Don, I hope I understood your question sufficiently. Every agency does work a little bit differently, so I'm just going to answer this sort of as best I can. This is not necessarily the way you need to or want to or will end up doing things. I'm just giving sort of a general answer as best I can here. So let's say we go back to our scenario with job 1110, where the client has said, okay, I want to change the scope here. I want to now include some printing. So you've changed your estimate. They've re-signed off on it. You've got it in writing anyway that there's a change. That'll show up on your invoice. And you may need to get the client to physically re-sign that, or you may just need to send them a copy or a verbal agreement. I think it's just good to have it captured in your FP system. Now you need to possibly change your schedule. Now, not all of our clients use schedules. Some only use schedules for larger pieces of work. Some use them religiously. Some start with a schedule as their workflow, and some will sort of use schedules now and then. If you guys are using schedules, which I believe you are, and that's fantastic, you may very well need to change that schedule because the scope has changed. Now, if you already have a schedule in place, as you probably do, I don't have a magic button, unfortunately, to say, okay, I want to push this change to my schedule. You would need to manually change the schedule. Now, if you hadn't created a schedule as yet, maybe the scope change is like, ooh, now that we've had the scope change, I definitely need to create a schedule. If you were starting with the schedule from scratch from here, it would certainly pull all this information. Let's say the schedule is already in place. Then we would need to go and change it. Now, I don't have a schedule in place for this one, so not a great example. I'm just going to go through a couple of steps here to get us there. So let's go with scenario one. Scope has changed. You did not have a schedule in place. It's very straightforward for that person to just say, I'm going to add the schedule, use the estimate as the template for my schedule, submit it, off it goes, and everything here is captured. So everything from our estimate is captured now on our schedule. Let's say now we've got our schedule in place and the client comes back to us again and says, hey, we want to add something else now. So again, following that best practice, I'm going to go back to my estimate. I'm going to make another change, revise an estimate. I'm going to revise it. And let's say I'm going to add another service instead. Let's say they want to add from their copywriting, art direction, and illustration, or copywriting, art direction, and concept. They want to now add some illustration, let's say. So they want to add, I think it's going to be about 12 hours worth of illustration. I'm going to save that. Now what do I do? Because now I have a schedule that doesn't match my estimate. Now schedules and estimates don't necessarily have to match, but this is a scenario where we probably do need to get our schedule updated because we've suddenly added a bunch more work here. So what we'll need to do in this scenario is go and manually change the schedule. So we don't have our add schedule button anymore. We do have our schedule stored here, and that's a quick way to get to it. Come in, go to the schedule details page. And I want to come into one of my edit modes, Outline Manager Full. I'm just going to go with Manage. And then I want to add illustration here or add the tasks associated to illustration here in whatever way I'm more comfortable with. So either by just choosing Add Task, or if I want illustration to go right under copywriting, I can put it there. Put illustration in, say it's part of my illustration bucket. I can assign it to a member of my team. And I can put the straight up 12 hours if I want to, or I can break those down into smaller pieces. It really depends a bit, again, on how you guys do things. And I don't want to get too specific because I know everyone does things a little bit differently. But that would be the basics of it, would be to come in and physically add whatever many lines you needed to add in. in order to
And here's
change.
another one for you.
Okay.
Oh yeah, so this is a little bit of a curveball, is it or isn't it? That's the question. So the question is, what do you need to do to add hours to an existing task?
Okay. Great question. I would recommend going in and editing the task itself. So let's go and let me see if I can find an example task. So hopefully, Don, that answered your question sufficiently. If it didn't, you know how to reach me, my friend. So just drop me a line and we can certainly review that together as well. And if it's something that people are really like, oh, yeah, I really want to know more about how to handle that, we can certainly do a session like this on this topic again. I was actually concerned that there wouldn't be that much interest in this topic. And a couple of my colleagues were like, really, we're going to do a whole webinar on like scope creep and email. But obviously we're getting lots of questions about it. And what we can do is in a subsequent subject session on this subject, expand it, not just to revising the estimate, but then what you would do with things like schedules and tasks. So feedback welcome as to subjects y'all want to see us do these kinds of sessions on. Okay, so getting back to that question, I'm going to come and just find a task in my system. Let's see what ones I have recently. I've got all these fabulous test tasks. So let's say, but let's do it a little more thoroughly here. So let's say I've got to find a task to edit the number of hours that are on it. I could come in and find it by any of these items here. So tasks maybe for active jobs only, tasks maybe that are already in progress. I can find those active tasks, choose the one I need. Oh, have I got enough? Oh my gosh. So I'm just going to pick one here at random, copywriting first paragraph. Let's say we need to change the number of hours needed to work on that one. Now, some of this and what I'm showing you is permission-based. Not anybody necessarily using your system would be able to come in and make these kinds of changes or edits. I'm assuming that the person who asked the question probably can do this or knows someone who can. So I'm on the task details page now for my Wolverine's Wood Carving Company trifold flyer, and I'm going to edit the details. So I had originally estimated this was only going to take an hour and a half. I'm going to bump that up to 3 hours, and I'm going to submit my change. Now, something I would also recommend doing, and I'm a big fan, is adding a comment. Because suddenly the person who may have this task will go like, whoa, wait a second, this was only supposed to take me an hour and a half, now it's taking me 3 hours. Adding a comment can be a good little thing to do. Just maybe even noting like changed estimated hours from, 1.5 to 3. That can be a good thing. Then you're saving that change. Another nice thing to do, again, me being a fan, would be on my dashboard, would be to pin a note to that person's dashboard, just saying, hey, guess what? I have had to go and change the number of hours associated to that task and just pin it to that person's dashboard, letting them know that that change happened. That can just be another nice way to capture that information, make sure your colleague is aware of the change you may have made. Hopefully that answers the question. Daniel, did you have anything to add to that scenario?
Yeah, I did actually. So don't forget that you can also go into an existing schedule, edit that schedule, and also play around with the estimated hours that you've budgeted within that schedule itself. So that can also be done versus having to go into each task in such a granular way.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're totally right there. So just to show that to people, if I come in and view the schedule here and come into one of the edit modes, I can certainly change the estimated hours from here. And that works really well if you're making multiple changes. I think it's good to know both ways, again, because not all of our clients use the schedules or use them too heavily. So knowing how to do it both ways is always a good thing. So thanks for pointing that out, Daniel.
My pleasure.
Okay, well, how are we doing for questions, Daniel? We've got more that we think we can answer here in this session.
We don't have any more questions so far, so that was the last question that came through from Suzanne.
Okay.
So maybe if we give our attendees a couple more minutes to put in any final questions, and then we can perhaps take any more questions offline.
Yeah, absolutely. What we'll do, I think, is I figure we'll stop talking. I will leave the session open though until 1 p.m. Pacific, so that's another 14 minutes. And I will answer questions, and Daniel can certainly lend a hand if he has time, answering questions just in the question editor. And anything that we can't answer there, we'll certainly take offline and address afterwards. Again, really thank everyone for taking the time to attend today. As I said, this subject was sort of a it was my suggestion as a subject. And again, I had a couple of people sort of say, really, we're going to do a whole webinar on that. But it looks like it was a popular subject. So we certainly can do this again and maybe even go into more detail per Don's suggestion to going into how this would affect the schedule, et cetera, if clients do make changes to the scope of the work. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone. The recording will be up probably tomorrow. Always welcome to reach out to any of us with questions or concerns. If you have a question about your system's functionality or technical questions, please reach out to support at functionpoint.com or to any of us. We're always happy to help. All right. We're doing this again. Actually, before I stop talking fully, let me bring back my agenda just to point out. So we've had our questions with Little Bird, of course, how to learn more, and our next session. So our next session is coming up next Thursday. That's going to be led by Mark, who's a very smooth presenter, as we all know, and that's all going to be about tracking time and how to report on that time. So hopefully people will be able to attend that one. If you would like to sign up for that, just come into your help section, and even just clicking on the community forum, you will be able to see this new webinar mini series over to the side and sign up that way. You can also sign up from the help page into training and coming into just this whole webinar series area as well. And there's the iHeart Jobs series as well. So a few ways to sign up. I think it's also being promoted on your sign-in page. So when you log into Function Point, you should see a link to it is there. So hopefully people can join us for that section next Thursday. And then the subsequent Thursday, the last one in this series, is going to be about expenses and reporting on expenses. Excellent. Well, thanks again, everyone. Thank you, Daniel, for co-piloting. And we'll leave the session open for a little while longer to answer any further questions. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.